Welcome to Dr. CM Edcast, your go-to resource for medical learning. Through discussions, case studies, tutorials, and debates, we help you learn, grow, serve.
Tucked away at the back of our skull, there's a structure that, even though it's pretty small, holds more than half of all the neurons in our entire brain. And that's the cerebellum. Now, it doesn't actually start our actions, but it is the master coordinator, the silent conductor making sure every single movement we make is smooth, timed, and precise. From something as simple as writing your name to the incredible grace of a dancer. It's all orchestrated by this amazing little brain. So let's dive in and see how it all works.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to journey through the cerebellum, starting with its physical anatomy. Then we'll trace the lightning-fast signals that run through its circuits. After that, we'll connect all that wiring to its incredible ability to coordinate movement. And finally, we'll take a look at what happens when this master coordinator has a problem. Okay, so to really get how the cerebellum does what it does, you've got to start with how it's built. So let's begin with its basic geography, its physical layout.
So if you look at the big picture here, you can see it has two large hemispheres, kind of like the main cerebrum above it. And connecting them right down the middle is this central region called the vermis. The whole thing is folded into these distinct lobes. And as we're about to see, this isn't just random. Each one of these regions has a specialized job for different aspects of motor control. This organized layout is really our first clue that we're looking at a highly specialized, very powerful processing unit.
Now here's where it gets really cool. If we were to zoom way in on the surface, the cortex of the cerebellum, we'd find something absolutely remarkable, a super consistent and elegant three-layered structure. You've got an outer molecular layer, a dense inner layer that's just packed with these tiny granule cells, and then, sandwiched right between them, is a single, critical layer of these massive neurons called Purkinje cells.
And here you can see that three-layer structure in beautiful detail. Just look at those incredible tree-like branches of the Purkinje cells reaching up into that top molecular layer, just waiting to receive information. This is not a random jumble of cells at all. It's a precisely ordered microcircuit, almost like a crystal, and it's designed for a very, very specific kind of computation.
And what's really profound about this design is just how uniform it is. This exact same three-layered circuit is repeated millions and millions of times across the entire cerebellum. It's almost like evolution stumbled upon this incredibly powerful little computational module for timing and coordination and just said, yep, this works, let's use it everywhere. It's a ridiculously efficient solution for motor learning.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint, the static architecture, but how does it all come alive? How does information get in, get processed, and then get sent back out to do its job?
Well, information comes in through two main channels. Think of them as two different kinds of messengers. First, you have climbing fibers. These are like a dedicated, high-priority line. A single climbing fiber snakes its way up from the brainstem and wraps itself around a single Purkinje cell, delivering this really potent all-or-nothing signal. Then you have the mossy fibers. They're all about breadth. They come in from all over the nervous system and they just fan out, activating thousands of those little granule cells at once, creating this huge, widespread pattern of information.
And inside the cerebellar cortex, these two types of input get handled very differently. The widespread mossy fiber signals fire up all those tiny granule cells, which then go on to excite thousands of Purkinje cells. Now, you've got other neurons in the circuit, kind of like editors, that come in and shape and refine all that activity, making sure it's precise in both time and space. And all the while, that climbing fiber is delivering its powerful, direct signal, acting almost like an error message, or maybe a teaching signal for the whole system.
And here it is, the crucial point. After all of that complex processing, the entire output of the whole cerebellar cortex is funneled through just one type of cell, the Purkinje cell. It takes in all that data and sends a single unified command down to the deep cerebellar nuclei. And get this, that command is always inhibitory. It's a precisely timed stop signal. That's the fundamental tool the cerebellum uses to sculpt and refine our movements.
Now, of course, these signals aren't just floating around in space. They travel along these massive fiber bundles called peduncles. You have the superior, middle, and inferior ones, and they're what physically connect the cerebellum to the brainstem. You can think of these as the information superhighways that carry all the input signals in and all the output signals out, integrating the cerebellum with the rest of the motor system.
Okay, so we've seen the hardware and the wiring, but what's it all for? What's the ultimate purpose of this incredibly sophisticated circuitry? Well, the answer is the seamless, beautiful coordination of movement. Probably the best way to think about the cerebellum is as a biological servo mechanism. You know, like how a thermostat in your house compares the temperature you want with the actual temperature and then makes a correction? The cerebellum does the exact same thing for movement. It compares the intended movement, the plan from the motor cortex, with the actual movement that's happening, based on sensory feedback. It calculates the error between the two and then sends out a corrective signal to fine-tune the movement, all in real time.
And this whole error correction job is actually split between three main departments, if you will. The most ancient part, the vestibulocerebellum, that handles our fundamental balance and keeps our eyes steady. Then there's the spinocerebellum, which coordinates the actual execution of our limb movements, like walking. And finally, the cerebrocerebellum, which is the biggest and newest part, works hand in hand with the cerebral cortex to plan and time really complex sequential actions, like speaking or playing a musical instrument. This feedback loop is running constantly, every second of the day. When your motor cortex decides to issue a command to move, it sends a copy of that plan, it's called an efference copy, down to the cerebellum. At the very same moment, the cerebellum is getting sensory feedback about what your body is actually doing. It compares the plan to the result, and if there's any mismatch, it instantly sends a corrective signal back up to the motor cortex. It's this constant, subconscious conversation that makes our movements smooth and accurate.
So after seeing just how beautifully and elegantly this system is designed, you can probably guess that when things go wrong, well, the effects are pretty significant. When the cerebellum is damaged, it causes a condition called ataxia, which is basically a loss of coordinated movement. Instead of smooth actions, movements become clumsy, jerky, and disjointed. This can show up as an intention tremor, where shaking actually gets worse as you try to touch a target, or as dysmetria, which is an inability to judge distance, causing you to overshoot or undershoot things. And even speech, which needs incredibly fine-tuned muscle coordination, can break down, leading to slurred speech or dysarthria. A classic, simple test neurologists use for this is the finger-nose test. A simple request, touch your finger to your nose, reveals the cerebellum's function perfectly. Someone with a cerebellar lesion will really struggle with this. Their finger might waver and shake, and that tremor will get worse the closer they get to their nose. They might even miss their nose completely. That's dysmetria and intention tremor right there in action.
And here's a really critical diagnostic clue. The main motor cortex in your cerebrum has contralateral control, meaning the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and vice versa. But the cerebellum's influence is ipsilateral. It controls the same side of the body. This is a huge clue for neurologists, because it means a lesion on the right side of the cerebellum will cause coordination problems on the right side of the body.
So you see, the cerebellum is the silent partner to our conscious mind. It's constantly correcting, smoothing, and timing our every move. It's the reason an athlete, a musician, or a surgeon can achieve these incredible feats of precision. They have, through countless hours of practice, literally trained their cerebellum to build flawless internal models of movement. Which leaves us with a final thought. What we call muscle memory, it has very little to do with our muscles at all. It's the silent, elegant, and perfectly timed computation of the cerebellum.